And let me just also say, because I've played basketball with him, and I have still some sore ribs to prove it, he's a competitor.
President Obama with Alexei Giannoulis last night, and he's got a couple more bruises today.
Yeah, with that jobs report hitting him right in the gut. Top line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News' Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Amy Walter.
Every day at noon Eastern, we're right here bringing you the latest in politics, everything you need to know before you head out the door to lunch. Twitter.com/Rick Klein, Twitter.com/Amy E. Walter. Amy, what do you know?
All right, well, here's where we're going to start off today with that jobs report momentum killer. While this is not the kind of thing Democrats were hoping to see just a month out from Election Day, jobs report out this morning has total job loss in the month of September at 95,000. It's higher than many economists had expected. Unemployment remains unchanged at 9.6%. Is this the change that Democrats were hoping?
It was a change in narrative that they had beginning to percolate over the last week or so, but now we're seeing it go in the other direction. Democrats are going to have a hard time explaining this. They were hoping that one last jobs report would at least give people the perception of the economy on the move again. They didn't get that here. They can talk about private sector growth, but that is not going to cut it when you look at the raw numbers on this.
Yep.
Next up today, the W word, and this time we are not talking about which. It's Jerry Brown's campaign trying to explain why an aide called Meg Whitman the W word, that other word that, can we say it here? I guess we can. It's whore. And Jerry Brown's campaign has already apologized for it, and Meg Whitman's campaign is pouncing on it. This is a different story for Meg Whitman's campaign to be talking about. They're happy to talk about this and not about immigration for a little while.
Right. Although, are they going to be happy to talk about this? I mean, once we get beyond the word and we dig into the story, what you find out is that this tape was released by the police union that gave her an endorsement, and that the endorsement was based in part on the fact that she said she wouldn't put their pensions. She wouldn't cut their pensions.
That?
So, right, when you have, I think you have two issues. The first is you have a Democrat saying, I'm willing to go and talk about cutting pensions for the police, and a Republican saying, I'm going to protect that. In the end, I don't know if that's something Meg Whitman really wants to spend a whole lot of time talking about.
They'd rather not see the substance.
That's right.
The light.
All right, the next top line here, Sharon's Sharia. All right, Sharon Engel, again in the news. This was a quote, report that she had told a group in Mesquite, Nevada last week. This was in the news last week, but we now have seen the tape recording of this, or heard the tape recording of this. There was a person in the audience who said that Muslims are taking over the United States. Here was Sharon Engel's response to that question.
She said, Dearborn, Michigan, and Frankfort, Texas are on American soil under constitutional law and not Sharia law. I don't know how that happened in the United States.
Is that really
what
true
happened?
in Dearborn,
exactly?
Michigan? And also, is there such a thing as Frankfort, Texas?
Not that we can tell. Frankfort, Texas, actually annexed by Dallas about 35 years ago. This is, look, if people were already going to be on board for Sharon Engel, this isn't going to give you pause before. Right. But for undecided voters who are looking at this and playing into what Harry Reid has said, which is that she's just a little bit weird and out there, this adds to that storyline in a hurtful way.
Right. And the question, though, is this just washing over voters right now? They've been just
so
overwhelmed with all of this data, all of this stuff about her for the last few weeks. At some point, you're right, you either believe it or you don't, and your mind is probably already made up.
And lastly today, Palladino's prowess. Carl Palladino took to the statewide airwaves yesterday in New York, and everyone thought this is his chance to apologize for those actions last week with the New York Post reporter, or maybe try to reset his campaign, but this is what he said.
For weeks, the media has badgered me about affairs. Are you having an affair now? How many have you had? When was your daughter conceived? What I meant to express in my anger is simply this. Does the media ask Andrew such questions? Andrew's prowess is legendary.
His prowess is legendary. I don't think he was talking about political prowess.
You don't?
Not sure.
That there, and he also at another point called him out saying he needed to be a man and come and debate him. So this is a real debate about manhood now, apparently.
Manhood and prowess and you name it.
Welcome to New York.
Just a few minutes ago, Amy and I had a chance to talk to Congressman Brad Ellsworth, a Democrat from Indiana who's running for Senate in Indiana. Take a look at that conversation. Congressman Ellsworth, thank you for being here on Top Line. I want to start with today's news, the jobs report, the last one before the election, has got a lot of people chatting. Disappointing news for Democrats, for the administration, not the numbers that you wanted to see. In your mind, did the stimulus work? Do you think that it was the right program? And why are we not seeing more job growth?
Well, I think it was necessary, and if you dissect the stimulus, that a third in tax cuts, a third in financial support to the states to keep them afloat, and then a third in the projects and grants, I think it did work. Is it fast enough? Is it enough? We'd love to see the numbers better, but we've dug ourselves a deep hole, and we're slowly digging out of that. We've seen encouraging signs, but it's still very fragile, so we've got to stay laser focused on how we're going to continue the recovery.
Well, and Congressman, how exactly would you do that in terms of helping the economy to continue? I mean, when are we going to be able to say the economy is actually better rather than it's just not as bad?
Well, I can agree. I agree with what you're saying. We got this report that said that the recession ended last September, and yet people back in Indiana are looking and saying, I don't want a pink slip. Where's my job? And so we have to do that. I would have voted before we left for recess to extend the tax cuts. That would have given some stability. People would know where we're going. I think we have to show businesses and employers what we're going to do. The reason they hold back is because we're not giving them stability. And so I think we in Washington have to do that. We have to make investments in advanced manufacturing. We have to cut the red tape for small businesses and large businesses so they can plan ahead. They don't plan in 2-year increments like Congress does.
Congressman, I want to ask you kind of a broad question here. You were one of the Democrats ushered into office under the big headwinds that Democrats took advantage of in 2006 and also in 2008. We saw in 2008 in Indiana, President Obama win the state, surprising a lot of folks. What has changed in the last 2 years that makes this such a toxic environment for Democrats in Indiana?
Well, I think people are, I'm not sure it's toxic. I think people in Indiana and across the country just want somebody that's going to serve them and not serve themselves, and quit the party bickering and the petty bickering and just make good common sense decisions. That's what I did when I was on the sheriff's department. You go out, people call 911, you go and you try to solve the problem. So many people we see on TV, what people see at home is all the shenanigans and all the theatrics. And this is serious business, and we should be serious all the time, regardless. These aren't Republican and Democrat problems, they're America's problems. We need to be laser focused, and that's why I think we're going to win this race.
But it is your party that's been in control of all of Washington for the last 2 years. Where has it gotten out of hand? Do you feel like Democrats have something to blame, some blame to shoulder themselves, I should say, in terms of the people's perceptions of problems in Washington?
Well, sure. I think any time that you're in charge and you have majorities, people are going to look and say, what are you doing? We've done some big things, and we've taken some bold steps from the very first votes on TARP. When President Bush came to us and said, our economy is going over a cliff, we need the help. We took some time, we made it better. TARP's being repaid. I think that actually saved our economy from going into a depression. The stimulus, you brought it up earlier. Nobody wanted to do it, and I voted against the first stimulus because I thought there were things in it that were not stimulative. Voted for the second because I thought it gave those states the ability. It put tax money back in people's pockets. It propped up the states in this tough time, and it also put some investment into projects and into some grants for great industry in Indiana. And so we took some bold steps, and we've got to continue.
Well, I want to go back to a point you made about stability for businesses. At one point, you have called your opponent, Dan Coates, his work that he did for a group that worked for a company that did outsourcing. You called that unpatriotic, the idea of outsourcing. Is that going to be helpful in terms of for businesses, for the government or other individuals to say that running your business by putting jobs in different parts of the world is unpatriotic?
No, I think there's a big difference. I'm all for free trade, fair trade, and when our American companies want to expand our business, we need to be a country that makes things again and expand our customer base and sell things again. But what I'm saying is, if that would have been a company that, let's say, built phone booths, there's not much need for phone booths anymore. But this is a company that were building automobile parts that are still being used. It was a vibrant company. And when GDX sold the company, part of that deal was that they were going to close these 2 American plants. They just happened to be organized labor plants. And those jobs, 800 people in Indiana, Wabash, Indiana, were pink slipped and told to go home. The jobs weren't eliminated. They were shipped to Mexico and Canada. They're still making those products in Mexico and Canada.
Well, should government do something about that?
Well, that's our job, to close the loopholes that encourage that. When the other countries are manipulating their currency, or when they are reimbursing and incentivizing their jobs, and America stands idly by and lets them do that, and yet we double tax through World Trade Organization or through our trade agreements, then we're on the short end of that, and the companies do it. I think that at that particular point, it is unpatriotic.
All right, Congressman Brad Ellsworth, Democrat of Indiana, running for Senate up there. Good luck with your campaign, and thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rick.